Thank you to our boy choristers. You sound magnificent in all ways, and thank you, Will Harmon, our senior warden, for that beautiful reading from Paul's letter to the Philippians. So good morning, everyone, and a warm welcome back to the 2019-2020 academic year at St. Albans School. My name is Jason Robinson, and it is my great privilege to serve as the 8th headmaster of St. Albans. By tradition, we begin each school year by gathering as a community in this sacred space, the Washington National Cathedral, a symbol of our schools and our nation's shared spiritual, moral, and civic life. Even though it is only my second year at St. Albans, I am reminded each day of the rare and special privilege it is to educate these extraordinary young men in the shadow of this magnificent structure, and to begin each school year by gathering here as generations of St. Albans students and families have done before, to reaffirm the moral and spiritual commitments that bind us together as a community. What a blessing it is to be part of this history, to feel the presence of the past and the promise of the future in our midst. And how can one not feel inspired when observing the tender and poignant ritual that just unfolded before us, watching our oldest students walk into the National Cathedral with our youngest students, our C-formers. It truly is the most heartwarming and lovely way to start the new year. I spoke often last year of my vision for a moral rather than a tribal understanding of brotherhood, a brotherhood abounding in love, a brotherhood of care, conscience, and civility. As you have seen this morning, and as you will see throughout your years at St. Albans, we call our young men here to walk a higher path, to embrace our common humanity, to view empathy not as a sign of weakness, but as a sign of strength. We see the best in these young men and insist that they see the best in themselves, encouraging them each day, as it says in our reading from Philippians, to live in humility, compassion, and sympathy, to lift up others into our embrace, to build a community of love and grace committed to ideals larger than oneself. So on this first day of school, with a full heart and a deep sense of optimism about the year ahead of us, I extend a heartfelt welcome to all of you. I want to say a special welcome to our new board members, our new faculty and staff, and especially to our new students. Whether you are a new C-former or are coming to St. Albans for the first time in a different form, know how excited we are to have you with us, how deeply we believe in you, and how much your gifts and contributions will enrich our community. I was new to St. Albans last year as well, so I remember the complex mixture of emotions you are now feeling as new students and as new families. Excitement, gratitude, anticipation, but perhaps a measure of anxiety as well. I found over many years of being an educator that the question most on the minds of students at the beginning of a new year is, will I fit in? Will I find success and a sense of belonging? For families, the most pressing question is often, will my son be safe in this school where I have placed my faith and my trust? I want to talk this morning not just to new students and families, but to our entire community about how we attempt to answer both of these questions and how we at St. Albans think about the purpose of education. To students wondering, will I fit in? Will I find success? And what does St. Albans expect of me? Let me say that we are a school of excellence, a place of very high standards and expectations where much will be asked of you. But we are also a deeply supportive and caring community. We will be with you every step of the way, encouraging you, lifting you up, and helping you discover parts of yourself you can only now begin to understand. We're also pleased this year to welcome a new member of a community, Bert, our new Labrador Retriever therapy dog, who will also be with you every step of the way to support you and make sure you have the best possible experience at St. Albans. I can't wait to introduce you to him on September 9th when he joins the community. You will achieve great things here, academically, athletically, and artistically. But our ultimate concern is who you are becoming as a person. and the qualities of character you develop during your time here. It is this, the transformation of your vision, your values, and your character, and the cultivation of your full humanity that is the promise of a St. Albans education. One of the great joys of spending each day with young men as talented as those who attend St. Albans is being in the presence of their curiosity, the diversity of their interests, and their wide-ranging intellectual ambitions. But we all know our boys are growing up in an age of increasing specialization, where they feel pressure from a very young age to focus on one subject, one sport, one instrument, one career trajectory. While not unmindful of the changes being wrought by specialization, St. Albans has always prided itself on being a countercultural institution. We believe boys reach their fullest potential, academically, athletically, ethically, and humanly, by being in an environment that exposes them to many different ideas, perspectives, and experiences. We resist one-dimensional ways of thinking about education, our boys, and the world they will inhabit. And we believe the breadth of perspective we give them and the freedom we give them to cultivate the fullest range of their humanity is the best investment in their future well-being and the best preparation for the world they will inhabit. These commitments have always been at the heart of our mission, and they seem to be enjoying something of a renaissance with the publication of a widely read book last spring called Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World, a book made famous by an opening chapter discussion of the contrasting approaches to excellence embodied by Tiger Woods and Roger Federer. Like all books worth reading, it has engendered debate and disagreement. But I found within it an affirmation of what St. Albans has always sought to accomplish on behalf of our boys, and a reminder that our philosophy of education, far from being anachronistic, has enduring relevance to the lives our boys will lead. So I say to all of our students assembled today, give yourself time, work hard, but don't be in a rush to have it all figured out. A member of last year's graduating class gave a homily in the little sanctuary I will never forget. In it, he quoted these lines from Shakespeare's Hamlet: "Lord, we know what we are, but know not what we may become." God be at your table. Not knowing who you will become during your time here is a gift to be embraced, as it will allow you to experience the transforming grace at the heart of a St. Albans education. In our sacred spaces and rituals of chapel, the refectory, and our classrooms and athletic fields and performing arts spaces, we will help you find yourself and your calling, drawing you into a communion with the fundamental questions at the heart of your humanity. Who am I? What do I believe? Who will I become? What will give my life meaning and significance? And how can I use the privilege of my education to serve causes larger than myself? We don't claim to have all the answers, but as an Episcopal school, we try to surround our boys with a sense that something of deep and profound importance is at stake in their lives and their education. The author John Meacham, who recently wrote a book called Songs of America with the country music singer Tim McGraw, describes this as the ambient reality he recalls from his own days as a student in an Episcopal school. To this day, each time he hears "I Sing a Song of the Saints of God," a staple in Episcopal school services, he says he's transported back to his days as a student and the sense that something of transcendent importance was happening through his education. As our boys struggle with the great questions of life, the ambient reality we create in Episcopal schools through the sounds and symbols and customs and rituals in our sacred spaces gives boys the sense of being part of something larger than themselves as they open their hearts to finding their purpose and their true calling in life. Through the changes and challenges they face, we try each day to give them a sustaining faith that, as Paul says in Romans 8, all things work together for those who are called according to God's purposes. And nothing can separate us from the love of God. To parents wondering, will my son be safe in this new school where I have placed my trust? I want to say that the safety and well-being and the flourishing of our boys is our most sacred obligation, a principle that was the foundation of the investigation we conducted last year and that informs all of our work at St. Albans. And yet, the notion of schools as safe spaces and the additional claims that are often gathered under this heading have become controversial within education and our broader society, with adherents claiming that schools need to exile not just physical threats to student safety, but also ideas and opinions that create emotional discomfort for students. And critics arguing that this project entangles schools in a program of thought regulation antithetical to the mission of an educational institution based on freedom of speech, exposure to a plurality of opposing viewpoints, and the cultivation of resilient students prepared for life as citizens in a complex world where they will routinely encounter ideas different from their own. As in so many other areas, our Episcopal identity gives us a way to reframe this debate and see it from a broader perspective. Dan Heischman, former upper school head at St. Albans and now the president of the National Association of Episcopal Schools, observes that the very need for a safe space tells us something about what we lack in our larger culture: a degree of commitment to one another, a higher regard for the other that goes beyond mere tolerance. Perhaps, he says, we need something more than a safe space in our schools. To be sure, safe spaces assure that people can feel free from harm, but is that enough for Episcopal schools? Is that enough for St. Albans? Heischman quotes John Sexton, the former president of New York University, who believes there is a critically important difference between a safe space and what he calls a sacred space. All schools, of course, care deeply about the safety of their students, but schools like St. Albans that embrace the idea of being a sacred space ask more of their students and offer them more in return. In a sacred space, the citizens of the community make a commitment to one another that goes beyond mere freedom from harm. In sacred spaces, each member of the community embraces the inherent dignity of every other member of the community as a being of infinite worth, as a child of God, as a fellow seeker of truth, or as we often say at St. Albans, as a brother. We not only protect and care for one another, we challenge each other and ourselves, and we know that this struggle, this journey, unfolds within a sacred commitment to truth, integrity, civility, and our common humanity. This idea of schools as sacred spaces comes naturally to us and has always been central to our work at St. Albans. As Dan Heischman observes again, we have the great fortune in Episcopal schools of being able to talk about the sacred without feeling clumsy or coming across as dogmatic. At its foundations, a sacred space is where things are different, where the divine and the human intersect, and where we can experience our humanity in a redemptive context. This past June, at the end of my first year as headmaster of St. Albans, I had the privilege of attending a farewell celebration for an extraordinary man who was retiring after 43 years of service to the Cathedral Close institutions. He said the following about what this community and its sacred spaces have meant to him and his family. For more than half of our lives, he said, my family has been warmly welcomed and then connected in one way or another to the wonderfully diverse activities located on this holy Cathedral Close. For 43 years, we have been blessed by the deeply inspiring proclamations of faith issuing forth from the schools, the cathedral, and St. Albans Parish. And for 43 years, we have been privileged to know and learn from this beloved community of God's people as they have struggled to create a climate of humility, diligence, justice, generosity, and love, and to create a safe, sacred, spirit-filled home for people of every faith and every belief. 2 of our grandchildren have been nurtured and transformed at St. Albans, where these values are held up to the highest level of expectation. So my family's spiritual and intellectual withdrawals from these holy precincts have truly been beyond all understanding. This place is an essential source of light and hope in a broken world, a world that the institutions here more properly and steadfastly insist is full of God's promise. I offer this prayer about the work of the activities on the Cathedral Close. Thanks be to God for all that you have been, and for all that you are now, and for all that you will be in the future, faithful to the service of God's kingdom. As I begin my second year at St. Albans, I too am filled with a deep love for this place and for all of you, for the privilege of traveling this journey together, and for the honor of belonging to a community that is an essential source of light and hope in a broken world, but a world we steadfastly insist is full of God's promise. I see this promise each day in the remarkable young men we are blessed to educate as we live in the grace that God has bestowed upon this community. These boys, these amazing boys, are the reason for our work and are the source of our greatest pride and joy. Never forget, gentlemen, how much you and your choices matter and how much we love you and believe in you. The future of this blessed school is now in your hands. This is your time and your moment. May God be at our table.